As I looked up from the mass of letters and maps spread across my table, I noticed with a small amount of annoyance that the lights were slowly guttering out and the fireplace was cold, without any embers left glowing. I had spent the entire day going over the information that was now laid bare on my table and had lost track of the time. As I loaded the fireplace and I lit it, I adjusted the controls on the fireplace to absorb most of the heat and only a little of the light, as the night's cool air was pleasant and I needed to recharge my modest cabin's energy reserves while still being able to see what I was doing. Once the fire was again going and the lights around the cabin lit again, I turned back to the cause of my distraction, and the fact that in but a few hours, dawn would be breaking and I would be called upon to answer the riddles that these sheets of vellum and linen presented. After centuries of enjoying a quiet retirement, despite all my efforts to remain that way, someone had not only found me, but managed to get a package delivered, a small fiddle case. Within this box, there was a job offer meant for my eyes, and only my eyes, as this box would ensure. Each fiddle case was of course unique, despite any outward appearances. Indeed, the Fiddle Touch made sport of making as many possible variants of their puzzle boxes as they could, while maintaining outward appearances of similarity, all the better to confuse would-be interlopers. But I knew this particular box well. For centuries it had been how I had passed objects of value or intelligence to the relevant agencies of the Criterion government. However, the last time I had seen it, it had contained my resignation. This time, however, it was filled with the various data and maps of locations within the Wild Realms, a series of targets for various styles of operation. Also, there were offers of pay and remuneration for each target, and they were most generous packages indeed. Whomever was behind this, they had plenty of coin, and seemed intent on securing my services, as the last item to come out of the extra-dimensional storage space made very clear. It was a large pistol, Christech, and of a make not seen in the realms for a very long time. Picking it up and looking it over, I was still amazed that any examples, or more likely replicas, had been able to survive this long outside of a museum when I saw it. A deep mark in the base of the barrel, as if it had been used to catch a blow in some desperate close quarters brawl. I softly gasped in dawning recognition. This was not a replica as I had thought, but an original piece, and a particular one at that. Again, not completely impossible, but not in any way a reasonable thing either. Just another show of wealth and power behind this venture, as well as a sign that they knew how exactly to grab my attention. Whoever this was, what they wanted was clear, and it was an understandable thing for anyone who was aware of the greater situation of the realms. The Wild Realms were a treasure trove of ancient lost artifacts and new resources. While all the sovereignties were now forbidden from further colonization and exploitation, it had not stopped those independents from setting up teams to do the work for them. While the hunters normally would be the venue for this kind of work, the same decrees that had brought the spread of colonies to a near halt also forbid the large-scale employment and deployment of the hunters within the Wild Realms without proper cause. That cause was almost always anti-piracy in nature, but it had been a rarity over the last few centuries. Therefore, independents were needed, but those were not exactly common, as the hunters served as the cross-realm standard for adventurers and specialists of all stripes to ply their trade, and nearly everyone was a member. So, someone was fishing for a highly skilled and almost totally unknown or forgotten about independent team, and was laying quite the golden platter before us to acquire our services. Nothing in these documents lent any clarity to what the eventual goal would be to justify a cost like this, so I had to assume that would come later. but what was on offer was more than enough for me to send the call out to the rest of the gang. Granted, the captain and the LT were already in town, as they were the ones to deliver the package after it had been left for them to find. I'd imagine that the little ones would have made it into town by midnight, and Navcon and his node would not be far behind them. It was anyone's guess whether Masnoa would answer or even show, for she had always been a wild card. None of us had bothered to join the hunters after we had retired. While the rest had been of a mind to do so, I was not. I was done with the great game, and had retired a full 30 years before the rest had. They had tried for years to get me to come back to the service before they too left, and for years they tried to get me to join them in going to join the hunters. I had refused, and I wouldn't have even bothered to sound the call if it was not for this pistol in my hands. Finding the box and using it to deliver the offer was one thing. Enough coin could make rather unlikely things become rather common. However, this weapon was not just an unlikely find, not some matter that could be solved by paying the right folks to look the right way or calling in favors with a local noble or lord. As far as I was aware, there had not been many of these to surface in all the years since the reign. Perhaps 3 or 4 at the very most, and none of them were functional. This is not only functional, it's fully functional, which spoke to a conclusion I truly hoped was just my paranoia. It spoke of the family, or the other gods, being involved. By the dreamer, is that what it looks like? Masnoa's soft voice caught me off guard. I think there is a partial example of one of those in the Great Temple's museum. None that I've ever spoken to have been able to even speculate what the full capacities of those were. Sitting in the corner, deep in the shadows, she was still as easy on the eyes as she was as hard to get an eye on if she chose to hide herself. I didn't even bother to ask how long she'd been there. Yes, a pre-fire multi-discharge rotator pistol. And by the family, it feels fully functional. All the chambers and conversion channels are intact, and the focus array is spotless. It was hard to keep the awe from my voice. Might be the only one of its kind left. Quite the enticement, Sarge. But the important question is, will it work? Her eyes were intense. You know we have all been waiting patiently for you to sound the call. Christonagelishness does have its perks. But if you're getting the gang back together, it's got to be for more than some pea shooter from the Wars of Feather and Scale. Her tone held nothing but dismissal for what was in fact a relic of the lost past of the Christons. It is not some pea shooter, it's... I stopped myself. Masnoa's keen wit had not dulled a bit, and she still knew how to get to me. It's a sign of what kind of individual is offering to back us. I ended with a calm smile, and I could feel that familiar tone and demeanor returning after ages from the back of my mind. Yes, it's a sign that even after being the only person to turn down the greatest honor that we can receive in the service of the Criterion House Advanced Division, or any branch of the service for that matter, there is still a vested interest in your services from someone with massive reach, even with the reason for your retirement. The force of the words came not from how she said them, but that she knew the words to use at all. I was in shock. How? Don't fret, Sarge. I'm the only one who knows. No, I'm not going to tell the rest. I'd relaxed. This was not a matter I ever wanted to visit again. Perfect memory is often a pain as a gift for the ageless. But if you're going to convince the rest that you are truly back in the game, you'd best have some reason for them that they will buy. Is that why you are here? To see if I'm really back in? You called, and I am here. I made a vow to you and the rest of the team. Well, in that case, you can start on breakfast. The others will be here soon enough, and I need to get this mess organized. We are going to have work to do. This board has been laid out, and it would be rude not to take this offer with some grace. Smiling wryly, she moved with her typical smooth grace, but with an alacrity I did not recall her possessing, moving from where she had been sitting to the kitchen in a blink, setting out pans and pots and humming a song softly. By the time she'd be done preparing breakfast, the rest would be arriving, and I would begin to lay out what was being asked of us and what we were being offered. Then the debates would begin, with each adding their own view and challenging the view of others. By the time we finished dinner, we should have about reached an accord if things went well. And if things didn't, I'd have the matter settled by dawn. Of course, I didn't foresee an issue, judging by how quickly and snarklessly Masnoa had not only answered my summons, but went to do as she was asked. If she was this eager, the rest would at best posture and banter with their opinions of the matter, and at worst there might be a debate over the cuts. But if the coin on offer was as stated, I didn't see that as an issue either. Even as the sounds of breakfast caught up to the smell of it reaching me, I knew we would be on our way as a team again by noon tomorrow. Hey Sarge, hope you don't mind me saying, it's nice to see you back to yourself. You've missed us as much as any of us have, haven't you? Masnoa still had that look. She wasn't sold. But I couldn't lie. I have, and I hate myself for it. I also can't believe it's taken this long for me to start doing it all over again. Her sudden laugh was as wholesome as the meal she was now making, and I joined in that laughter joyously. By the 9 and 4, welcome to the library. Today we're going to have a brief look into the Wild Realms, or the various planetoids and other habitations within the Credelis sector that are not under the direct control or supervision of any of the nations or other realm recognized powers. As always, my perceptive patrons, this is just an overview of this topic. Particular places of note will get their own entries as time goes on. To begin, it is important to note that while the Wild Realms are legally beyond the recognized authority of anyone short of the councils themselves, those that cause too much of a problem for any particular seat of power or individual of means will be dealt with after enough provocation, regardless of any legal jurisdictions that are involved. However, due to the recent rulings and decrees passed by the Council, what had been a rather healthy rate of expansion for all the major factions within the realms across new worlds and places has been brought down to a trickle. The exact reasons for these decrees are as of yet still unknown, with speculation suggesting that it is perhaps a delayed reaction to the events of the Scriptorum War, those actions being rapid expansion accidentally encroaching upon the territory of an existing power or pre-existing culture. Others say it's to allow the Wild Realms to be more thoroughly explored, as there are still vast numbers of unknown pre-Reign ruins or other examples of the effects from the first travels of the expedition fleet pre-War of Feather and Scale. Any of these could have ancient pieces of tech, lore, or innovations that were lost during those conflicts to be brought back to the greater realms. While many life-sustaining realms have been identified and cataloged, the materials and resources that are required to link each star system or individual realm with the greater whole are both rare and very limited in their production. As such, many think that this is the true reason behind these decrees, as it is a part of Council Charter that all civil realms will be provided the means to remain so connected with the greater realms. Thus, one of the only common factors in the Wild Realms description is that they all lack a permanent cog gate, a cog gate being the means by one is able to reach cog space to travel, or to act as the endpoint for such a journey, as the only other reliable way to travel from one realm to another other than the cog gates is to travel through real space at speeds while still faster than the speed of light, or foe as it is known in the realms, and can be much as an order of magnitude or more slower. Thus, the lack of a constant cog gate within a system or on a planet effectively renders it outside the reach of the vast majority of the realms. This isolation is why they have also become the go-to location for those that wish to go unseen or unbothered. As a ship with a cog drive can serve as an endpoint for other travelers as well, it is possible to move within the wild realms with efficiency if one has the connections or resources. Thus, pirate fleets, smugglers, and others find them perfect bases of operation, while also trying to discover any artifacts that they could use to buy their dreams and aspirations, whatever they may be. As the hunters, by and large, are not allowed to go after these vagabonds as they would be able to normally in a civil realm, save for the most egregious of privations, independent resources are rapidly becoming the norm, whether via one of the various non-existent guild or organizations, such as the Thieves Guild or the Assassin's Lodge, or more commonly, recruited retirees of the armed services of various realms. These trained and highly skilled operators can perform just as well as their hunter counterparts, without the worries of them being hired by a competitor after the job is done. Of course, none of the nations of the Council are employing these teams, as that would violate the decree, but it is not within their authority, as alluded to earlier, to stop a noble or other lord from using their personal resources to do the same thing. This loophole seems intentional, as it does reduce the scope of operations to a slow crawl compared to what any one of the major powers could set into motion if allowed to leverage their full might. It also has the benefit of obfuscating who is working for who, thus preventing any misadventures that may occur in the wild realms from having any real lasting impact on the greater realms' politics, while allowing the benefits of any discoveries in the wild realms to filter into the greater realms. As relics, such as the Expeditus Primus, were discovered in similar manners to this, and inter-realm stability has been maintained, if not enhanced. This practice will continue likely long into the decrees limiting expansion. Even without the official support of the government, there are a large number of people that are not only willing, but eager to live on the very edge of the frontier. These pioneers can relatively easily set up basic colonies using commonly available technologies, such as the homesteader wagons or their variants. This allows for groups of dedicated individuals to stake their claim and try to make a go of it, with the hopes of eventually gaining recognition as a fully council-recognized realm. Such goals are the aim of many, while others just wish to be beyond the reach of the bulk of the realm's populations. The possibilities of wealth, fame, and a place of leadership amongst the new nation draws many to these lawless and unruly lands. Because of the vast amount of unique and rare materials that have been already discovered on many of the new realms colonized, the path to economic solvency and eventually prosperity is a very real and obtainable goal, even if reaching the status of council recognition is not for many of these realms. In fact, one of the only duties that the hunters can be contracted for in the wild realms is to provide the initial transit for one of these endeavors, and even then, they are not allowed to remain within the wild realms for longer than a week after arrival. This ensures that there is an easily attainable way with those with the drive to get to the frontier, while ensuring the hunters, who, as a whole, are considered neutral in the matters of national affairs, are not brought into conflicting situations where one team of hired hunters might have to engage another. Barring the exceptional situations, a week's time is far more than enough for an initial setup of a colony, the sourcing of local fuel or energy to maintain the colony's basic needs. After this, it's up to the brave souls to meet the challenges that their new home is sure to have in store for them. With this brief look into the basics of the realms, I hope you have a better understanding of not only what they are, but more importantly, why they are. Until your next visit to the library, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other.